You may be seated. I now invite Jonathan Emanuel, our Director of Education, forward. And like magic, they turned up.
Erase the last 60 seconds. I learned the most from my students, as I said before. So, Shalom Kol Shofar. You are all right praying. Today is Lag BaOmer. It's the 33rd day of counting the Omer. The 49 days between Pesach and Shavuot, between freedom and redemption. We are free as Jews in the world, but how do we feel and recognize that freedom? How do we fulfill it? Well, one way is through the ultimate gift, Torah, which we commemorate receiving on Shavuot in just under 2 weeks. God said that for this gift, we simply must learn it and fulfill the mitzvot within it and the lessons that it teaches us. That way the Torah lives through us, right? Right. But how do we receive this Torah? How do we ensure that it lives beyond this revelation that we had at Sinai? Beyond the destruction of the temple? In the diaspora? After B'nai Mitzvah? You laughed there, thank you. Okay. God knew of this dilemma. God knew that being the chosen people was not enough. That we would be preoccupied with aspects of our life that freedom brings us. I mean, there's a lot of distractions out there. The world is full of distractions, from work, from school, from success, from failures, wandering children. Once again, cute. Progress, technology, Netflix, Frozen. Oh my God, Frozen. You know, worldly distractions. I know, the Frozen joke, that was for you guys. We could, at some stages, say, lose the importance and the relevance of Torah in our lives. I mean, there's so many things that we could put our minds to. How do we focus on Torah? So God requested that the people, us people, find guarantors. Guarantors, well, they're the people who would ensure that the Torah would never be forgotten. Okay, to remind us. To remind us that we need to study Torah and follow its teachings. Follow its mitzvot. To guard the Torah and ensure that it would be treated with respect and never be forgotten. So, of course, first the people, they say, okay, well, what should we do? Let's go check with our elders. They'll be our guarantors. I mean, after all, they have time. I mean, they're retired. They have no jobs, no burdens of occupation, the daily grind. It's fine. They can do it. They have free time. But God said, no, that won't work. So then the people said, how about our rabbis? I mean, they're the sages. They're employed, which is a good thing. They study Torah like all the time. Like always. Always. In fact, it's in their job description. Nope. Sorry, that won't work. Said God. God wanted assurance that all the Jews would study, not just those with ample free time or those whose occupation it is to study. Even they have challenging time leading and applying all the Torah to their lives all the time. Almost everybody does. It can't just be Grandpa Max or Rabbi Greenblatt or Vladimir Levy. So the people suggested others. They thought of gardeners. Well, they understand growth and nature. No. Police officers, I mean, they can enforce rules, right? No, that won't work. Newscasters, they know how to talk to people. Hebrew school directors. No, totally insane. Programmers, celebrities, salespeople, they go through the whole list of everyone you can think of. Finally, the Jew said, wait. We'll offer our own children. It's exciting. Good job. They study, right? When you guys study? Yeah? No. Yeah? Like sponges these kids are, and they will guard it for generations. And they will share it. I mean, they love to share it. They love to talk. And they'll share it with joy. They have time, usually, and they aren't preoccupied with the daily grind, with other worlds of distraction. Okay, except for us. So God agreed. The children will be our guarantors. When a child is taught Torah early on in life, accompanied by the understanding that it generated via joyous learning, every lesson becomes a sweet memory. A morsel that is sweetened with each question. This is where the Hasidic tradition of starting a child's life when they first learn Torah with a dab of honey. Or candy in Maryland's class. Each discovery, each viewpoint shared and wrestled between students, teachers, grandparents, parents, friends. It's carried by the youth throughout the generations into eternity. That, my friends, is Torah. Even Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, whom we commemorate today on Lag BaOmer, knew that God forbid the Torah be forgotten. But then he added, it will not be forgotten in the mouth of the progeny of the Jews, in the mouth of the children. The unity, the depth, and the joy that's generated is what allows for Torah to be carried forever. Passed by the younger, to the younger, by older role models. Teachers, guarantors. Not only do they pass it among each other, but it is passed by children to their elders, their families, and their parents. We get to hear what they learn in our homes, even in the car on the way home, from time to time. So this is why there's a tradition to bring our children to shul on Shavuot, to hear the Ten Commandments, or on the high holidays, or Beit Binah, or day school, or Tichon. Today, we commemorate the spiritual concept of our children as guarantors in a physical representation by passing our newly completed Torah, or almost completed Torah, from oldest to youngest. On this culmination of our year of Beit Binah, which is also today, the House of Understanding, and our Torah, we pass it to our youngest children so that they experience its sweetness and bless it as it reaches fresher and newer hands. They are, after all, our guarantors. So please rise if you're able, and we need all of our Beit Binah representatives, starting with kindergarten and going back to 6th and back. And next to your Okay, so we do this to commemorate the finale of the year, and we hand it to the next class because they're going to be the next oldest grade next year. And also this will commemorate what we just talked about passing the sweetness of Torah to our children. So it's going to start with the 6th grade.
I love Torah.
There are 2 witnesses for many Jewish legal proceedings. The 2 witnesses, or adim, have a very special role. They witness that commitment. And I always like to say when I'm officiating at a wedding, I give instructions to the adim that they're witnessing not only the ketubah and that moment of the marriage, but they're really there to be guardians of the relationship. That it's an important role that they have for the couple in the future to remind them of the commitment that they're making, to support them throughout their relationship. And so in a few moments, when we complete the writing of our ketubah, we are going to have, in addition to writers, we're going to have witnesses, adim. And really everyone here is serving as adim, as witnesses. So I want to invite you, those of you who are coming up to be witnesses, but really all of us who are here today witnessing this moment and this ketubah, which is our Torah. I want to invite you to think about yourselves as witnessing not only this moment of commitment and covenant and marriage, but really to think of yourselves as guardians of this relationship going forward, of guardians of what this sacred document represents for us as a couple, our community with the Holy Blessed One. So I'd like to ask the children behind me to put up 7 fingers. Can you put up 7 fingers? Very nice. Very nice. Why are we finishing the Torah today with 7 letters? What do these letters mean in the context of the end of the Torah? And what do these 7 letters mean to us? 7 is a significant number in Jewish tradition. Genesis tells us that the creation cycle is 7 days. 6 days God worked and rested on the 7th. And when we fashion our 7-day weeks in this manner, we are like God. And this concept shapes the sabbatical year idea. There's a 7-week period from Passover to Shavuot. Jonathan just talked about that. We mark the pilgrimage from embracing freedom from slavery to stepping up to the responsibility of covenant in the Torah. And the menorah in the temple in Jerusalem had 7 branches. And so today, 7 figures prominently for us in this covenantal moment. The commandment to write a Torah scroll is based on the following verse from Deuteronomy chapter 31. Therefore, write down this song for yourselves and teach it to the people Israel. Put it in their mouths. in order that this song may be my witness against the people of Israel. And millennia later, the rabbis go on to teach that even if a community has the financial resources to immediately purchase the Sefer Torah, it is a higher mitzvah to include the entire community by asking them to contribute to the writing of a new Sefer Torah. Torah means instruction, and it also means ketubah, as Rabbi Kai just shared with us. Torah is also, in addition to being a ketubah, a love letter between God and the Jewish people, as Jacob Pidachowski teaches us. But what does Torah mean to us? We gather as a community, and yet we're aware that there are many who are not physically with us in the room at this moment. And I invite you to take a few moments to close your eyes and to invite them in now. Who are the teachers of Torah who have shaped us? Parents, rabbis, teachers to whom we can feel grateful for teaching us Torah. Who are the students of Torah we've inspired? For those of us who are parents and our children are not here with us today, invite them in. Grandparents, invite your grandchildren, for you have taught them Torah too. This moment transcends time and generations, for we all stood at Sinai, and when a Torah is completed in the presence of a holy community, Kol Yisrael, Kol Yoshvei Tevel, all Israel and all who inhabit the earth are in some way present. And as we open our eyes, we become a part of the final words of the Torah. Asher Asa Moshe Le'nei Kol Yisrael, that Moses did all of this, all of the signs and wonders he did with a strong hand, leading us to freedom. And where did he do this? Le'nei Kol Yisrael, in the eyes of all of Israel, in front of all of Israel. The Torah ends with the letter Lamed. And this indicates that the one who studies Torah and fulfills it, all of those person's deeds will elevate him or her, giving greatness. And as Rabbi Kai has exhorted us, may we all renew ourselves today to study Torah, to elevate its place in our lives, so that this holy moment of writing a Sefer Torah today lives on in our commitment to the covenant at Sinai. And we remember that the last letter of the Torah, the Lamed, the last letter, the word Yisrael, when joined with the Bet, the first letter of the Torah, spelled the Hebrew word Lev, meaning heart. In this great circle of Torah, when we complete the reading, we start over again at the beginning, and it's through this continual reading and studying that we have heart. A wise student is like a heart. Just as the heart makes it possible for all the limbs to exist, by the means of the heart the limbs are nourished, so too with the righteous person. Torah is our well of nourishment. May we always come back for more and be blessed through God.
Amen.
And I now welcome Mark Cohen forward, and I will give you some passage for it to shall we do so?
Thank you, Rabbi Leiter. This is a beginning and an end. It's a beginning for us to create a history for this new Torah, and it's an end of the process of the birth of the Torah. And I've been involved in the birth of the Torah, so I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and tell you a little bit about the genesis of that and how we got to this moment and the closure that we'll soon experience. About a year before Rabbi Leiter joined us, there was discussion in the ritual committee about the need for a Torah. And this was a renewed discussion. And there was a tremendous amount of excitement about receiving a new Torah and the need for it, but also that the energy that it would create in building community and bringing the community together. And it was you could feel the energy. And thanks to Sandy and Mark and many others and all of us, that became a reality. And it's just a wonderful experience to bring this to closure. I had the honor to work with Zerach Greenfield on a somewhat regular basis with calls and emails to make sure that the Torah was progressing as needed so we can reach this point. And it was a wonderful experience. And the next time we meet in Torah, I'm sure Zerach will be overjoyed to help us again. And without further comment, I'd like to welcome Zerach Greenfield forward to complete.
מה שאני אעשה היום בשם קדושת ספר תורה. Everything I do today in writing the Sefer Torah is for the kedusha, the holiness of that Sefer Torah.
When those who have been honored with writing and assisting Zerach in writing the last letters of the Torah, we ask them to please come up to Zerach's right. And we also ask the children to please clear space on that side for the witnesses who will come up on Zerach's left. So people on that side, the children, we ask them to take one. Perfect. That is awesome. Okay? At this time, we call forward Scott and Barbara Waxman to write the Kaf.
Witnessed by Keith Chertok and Maria Ramos Chertok.
Don't screw it up.
You are
My shaliach,
my shaliach.
finish this letter.
Finish this letter.
If you look at the cup means spoon, like a cup. And you can see that that's exactly what it looks like on its side.
Sort of like, I might add, as he writes, that we write this letter and all 7 of these last letters on behalf of our sacred community, because we really are all one. We may be standing here, but it's all in our midst. And I also want to particularly recognize all of the past presidents, because it's the past president.
Can't touch the table. Right? But then you could shake my arm.
Because it's the past presidents that got us to this point today as a community. So the past presidents in our, I was going to say stand, but we're all standing. But I do want to acknowledge the past presidents and to every member of our sacred community. This Torah is for all of us.
Just
We now call forward Jeff and Barbara Farber to write the Lamed.
Witnessed by Gary Scholich and Carol Tabb.
the first of 2 laments that will complete the writing of the Torah.
Say B'Shem, Kedusha, Sefer Torah. You are my Shaliach to finish this letter. You have a phone?
So keep it to someone take that picture.
And we're going to finish a lamed. You may remember we taught that the lamed is made up of a vav and a kaf. And that equals 26, which is also equals the name of God. A yud, a hey, a vav, and a hey is also 26. There's your lamed.
We now call forward Sam Salkin and Ruth Ellen Toole for the writing of the Yud.
Witnessed by Mark and Toby Raven.
Okay. We're ready to start the last word of the Torah. The Yud. You know, if you look at the last 5 letters, they have the names of all of the Avot and Imot, the fathers and mothers. Yud is for Yitzchak and Yaakov. And the Yud is a very small. Rabbi talked about 7 being an important number with lots of important numbers. One of the important numbers is 10, Yud for 10. And you know, when you think about 10, they say that God said the word Vayomer 10 times in order to create the world. And there's 10 commandments. And there's the 10 plagues. This Yud is very important. But on the other hand, if you look at the Yud, it's the smallest little letter we've got. That also tells us a message. Sometimes important things come in small packages. Say B'Shem,
B'Shem,
Kedusha, Sefer Torah.
Sefer Torah.
You are
You are
my Shaliach
my shaliach
to finish this letter.
to finish this letter.
And here's your Yud. Exactly what I was supposed to. It's supposed to be.
We call forward Dave and Colleen Horowitz for the sin, the 4th to last letter in the Torah.
Witnessed by Norm Traeger and Nancy Draven.
In the Torah, there are no vowels. It would be a lot easier if there were, wouldn't it? Read. But there's a reason for that. When God gave us this Torah, He did not want to limit us. He said, you've got it, now expand on it, learn from it, develop from it. And once you put the vowels in, you can't learn so much. Because the words are exactly the way they are. I'll give you one example. When we put on tefillin, what arm do you put them on? We put them on our weaker hand. Why? You want to make things difficult? It's easier to handle your right hand? No. It says in the Torah the word yadecha. Now I normally spell yadecha, yud, dalet, chaf, sofit. But in one of the sections of your tefillin, it actually spells it as yud, dalet, chaf, hey. I could say yadecha from yud, dalet, chaf, hey. Of course in yud, dalet, chaf, sofit. But I can also read it instead of yadecha, I can read it as yad, which means and keheh. Guess what that means? Weaker hand. So we need to have this ability to expand on the Torah. It wasn't meant to be a narrow little book. It's meant to apply it to all of our lives. We're now going to a sin. The sin, we know it is a shin or a shin, it's the same letter. And the shin is very important. Some of you already heard this drasha from me, but the shin is made up with, we speak, shalom. Right? You want to go bowling, your friend wants to go to the movies, you go to a movie about bowling. We compromise. It's a wonderful concept. The Rambam brings it down many times. It's called Shvil HaZahav, the golden path. Sometimes it's hard to compromise, hard to give up on our views because we think they're so important. Sometimes we have to learn that we have to be able to adjust because it's so important for us to love and appreciate each other. Say what you say. You should hold it too. You want to hold it also? Say V'shem. Kiddushat. Sefer Torah. You are my shaliach to finish this letter. And there's your shoe. And Shin, Sarah, so the Imam.
We now call forward Steve Telsky and Mark Friedman for the Reish.
Witnessed by Blaine and Edie Warren.
The Reish is a very interesting letter for us to write. Besides standing for Rosh, it's a very simple letter. There's not a lot of complexities to it. Our leaders, we're not looking for complex leaders. We want simple, straight answers to what we need. But the Reish also is a very important thing because that Reish has great flexibility. When you talk about the Sefer, he has to justify his columns. So what happens when he has too many, not enough, he has a letter, but he has space. He can stretch his Reish. Leadership knows how to stretch, to make adjustments. And so certainly in the case of the people that are so active in the synagogue, that's an important part of their lives. So B'Shem, Kiddushat, Sefer Torah. You are my shaliach to finish this letter. There's your Reish. And the Reish stands for Rivka and Rachel. My wife's name.
We now call forward Howard and Diane Zach for the Olive.
Witnessed by Bob and Mary Goldfine.
We're now going to finish an Aleph. And if you look closely at the Aleph, You'll see that it has a point going up, we talked about, and a point going down. Point up and a point down. Why does it have that? Because the Aleph signifies the world, Eretz, the wonderful world God gave us. You know, we talk about the very beginning when I first started, we talked about the bet and how God gave us an obligation. That's why the bet is so big. And everything before the bet we can't understand. It's beyond our understanding. There's no time. It's God's world. There's no time. There's no space. But as soon as God began to create the world, he gave us an obligation to understand it, to learn about it, and to preserve it. And so the bet was the beginning. But the Aleph tells us a different message, a little bit different. He says, the world that we're supposed to preserve and protect has that point going up and point going down. You have an assignment tonight, a very serious assignment. You tell your parents at 4 in the morning you have to get up and look out at the sky. And you see stars. Thousands and thousands of stars. Because, you know, in God's world, we're a small part. In the total cosmos, we're just a small part. So even though we're pretty important in this world, we have to keep in mind that in the whole cosmos, we should have a little bit of humility. Right? And say it, be ashamed. Keep your shot. Sefer Torah. You are my shaliach to finish this letter.
The last time I ceded on a Jewish ritual to a higher authority were my kids' brisses. They're always asked, do you want to do it? No, I'd rather not do it. Yes. You should have as much success with the Torah as my kids had in their brisses.
In neither case do you need a shaky hand.
And the Aleph, who does that stand for? Who in the Torah is Aleph?
Aaron.
Abraham, right, Abraham.
Yasher Koach. And now call forward Nana Meyer and Sandy Stacker for the final lamed, final letter, such as well. Witnessed by Ron and Rhea Brown.
What you ordered, isn't it? Well, then I'll take it back. And you have to finish a few other letters, and we'll be ready to finish the last letter.
Nana.
And the last lamed stands for, are you ready for it? Stands for Leah. And that makes Ha'imot and Avot. And they're all listed in the first book of Bereshit. And the Netziv, a very great scholar, tells us what's the whole purpose of this Bereshit. You know, Genesis is lots of stories. And those stories, the whole purpose of those stories is to teach us how to relate to people. It's not teaching us how to relate to God so much. Our number one goal, of course, it teaches us that God exists. Abraham started that people. But it teaches us how one should relate to one another. Somebody comes to you and you can think of all the stories that you've learned. It's always with that purpose. This is a book This is a book of stories, but only stories with a purpose. And not stories, we have lots of stories in the world which we enjoy. This is to help all of us, the children, the parents, the grandparents, the children that haven't come yet, all to be better people. That's why God gave this to us. And we're going to finish the Loeb of Yisrael, Kol Yisrael, all of Israel. This is the one document that unites all of our people. And in times like this, it's important to be united. B'Shem, Kiddushat, Sefer Torah. You are my shaliach to finish this letter. And to finish this Sefer Torah. I don't make a mistake, man.
He makes a mistake.
There it is.
We call for renewed class to lift our new Sefer Torah and Sharon Dressman to dress it. Please rise if you're not already standing. Okay, I understood. Trying to wait for that. Okay, so, play, everybody. What we're going to do is we want to have the kids stay here, stay right where you are, because Klezmer Soul would like to accompany you in singing Just give them a moment to get back to their instruments. And so you guys will start and we'll all join in. And that will be a tradition and everyone can have a full visual of the entire Torah.
I think waiting at
I think, and as it is time, please join us, kids. Are you ready?
la la la